My name is Dr. Donald Moen. I'm a professor at the Algonquin College Advanced Institute of Technology in the Department of Media and the author of Bricklaying Britannia about Pink Floyd's Wall. So on this channel, I go through each part of the movie, track by track, how it relates. I'm not going to show the video or get in any copyright trouble, but links will be in the description to what I am talking about. So let's get into it. All right. Um, the movie was filmed in or produced in 1983. The album in 1979. And the first track on the movie isn't in the album. It's an old song by a British singer named Vera Lynn that was popular during World War II, called Little Boy the Santa Claus Forgot. All right. Most of the wall is all about Roger Waters' relationship with his father. And there's a lot of Freudian stuff in this. Okay. And if you want to know more about that, just check out a book by a guy named Phil Rose, written in 1998, called Which One's Pink? That has a lot of good Freudian basis for all that stuff. And you can also dig up all kinds of Roger Waters interviews where he talks a lot about Freudian stuff. So, there's not really a reach here. It is. So the film has a lot to do with his father and his opinion of his father, and what happened with the death of his father in Anzio, Italy, during the Second World War, or the Second War, as they call it in Britain. Now, the film opens with this fading, okay, and the darkness gets like progressively brighter, like a train tunnel, right? If you're familiar with Freud, you know what that is, right? That is a sexual connotation example, right? The train being the phallus coming in, okay? But it's a hotel hallway with a cleaning lady, okay? So we move from darkness into light, and the first thing we see is a woman. And on this channel, you hear me say a woman, that one, but you also hear me say woman. And what I mean by that is a capital W. I mean the intellectual concept of woman. Okay, at least according to the film. Now, you have this kind of going into the light and seeing this woman. It's almost like it's birth. Okay, moving through the tunnel into life. Okay. Now, just a little background on Vera Lynn. She was born March 20th, 1917. Okay. She's known for Second World War recordings. Okay. In Waters' generation, and certainly the generation before that, her recordings were well known. They were morale supporting recordings, some would say propaganda recordings. She hosted a BBC radio show called Sincerely Yours during the war. Okay. And these ballads that she sang were especially popular with servicemen. Now, she also did armed forces tours. She toured Burma in 1944. Okay. She did wartime films. She was even made Dame Vera Lynn in 1976, which is, in fact, the same year that Waters first got the idea for the wall when he was performing in Montreal. And he spat on a fan in the front row and was utterly disgusted with himself and thought of the creation of a wall between himself and the audience. So you have this 1940s orchestral style, and you may want to like just pause the video, go listen to it, come back. Okay. All right. And there's this melody, this slightly swung 4/4. Okay. That's important to remember because a lot of popular music was that slightly swung, not swing, not jazz, but slight influence. Okay. That dotted rhythm concentration, if you read music. There's also this scratchiness to it, like an old recording on vinyl. Okay, so there's also that. So there's a singing this very famous song. I think the lyrics go, Christmas comes but once a year for every girl and boy. The laughter and the joy they find in each new toy. I tell you of the little boy who lives across the way. This little fellow's Christmas is just another day. So this was a fairly famous wartime song. And from the lyrics, I mean, this boy, little boy, doesn't have Christmas, right? The Christmas is just another day. So there's not really like Christmas. Okay. But for children, I mean, you also have the idea of consumption. So there is a capitalist, consumerist aspect to this in the sense of the boy's not getting any presents. There's also the idea of nothing to hope for during wartime. Okay. This estrangement from the economic system, the capitalist system, the boy's culture. Okay. Uh, and if you know the wall well, there is a track called Bring the Boys Back Home later in the album. Okay. And it starts out with, does anybody here remember Vera Lynn? Remember how she said that we would meet again some sunny day, and we would meet again is this track that Vera Lynn sings, and it seems in the song that we're going to meet again in heaven. So this whole loss of Christmas, okay, as at the beginning of the movie, this is where it starts, okay, brings in this trope of the loss of Pink's father, his identity, his ego. Okay, there are things for him not to connect with. Okay, and if you look closely, I mean, there aren't a lot of lyrics, but the laughter and the joy they find in each new toy, there's a direct connection to the consumption here. Okay, and this boy is outside of consumption because this low files Christmas is just another day. Okay, so it sets the stage for what we're going to see a lot of later. Okay, and you can see this is how Pink is portrayed in the film, right? I mean, Santa Claus has forgotten Pink, right? Now, in the film, and even in the album, you hear this in some tracks being called Pink, but in the early days of Pink Floyd, and Pink Floyd is named after two bluesmen. But the interviewers they had initially would say, well, which one of you is Pink Floyd? Right? Which one's Pink? Right? And so this was an ongoing joke inside of the band. Okay. And the loss of sanity, which is also a big theme in all of Pink Floyd's music. The first frontman, first singer of Pink Floyd, Syd Barrett, became too mentally ill to continue with the band. And that's when David Gilmour came into the band. In fact, the Wish You Were Here album is really quite dedicated, really all about Syd Barrett, who had, there's a famous story of Syd Barrett having gained a lot of weight and shaved his head, and he came to the studio and saw his former bandmates and they didn't even recognize him. So look up that video and look up that picture, excuse me, and compare to earlier pictures of Syd Barrett. He is quite unrecognizable. But there is that loss of sanity that is playing throughout here as well. And also remember that Santa Claus is also Father Christmas, and better known as Father Christmas in Britain, right? And if you're American or Canadian, as I am, it would be important to remember the Britishisms, the language that Brits tend to use okay, in a lot of the subtlety, and especially the language that the baby boomers grew up with, because Roger Waters is a baby. So you would assume Father Christmas to bring gifts home, right? So the father, in terms of capitalism, in traditional gendered hierarchies, allows the family class mobility, right? Without him, there is no class mobility, right? There is just impoverishment, right? And you'll notice here there's the omission of women. You can see a cleaning lady, but that's it, right? The boy seems to be left to fend for himself, okay? And in Bring the Boys Back Home, it says, don't leave the children on their own, but they aren't on their own. They have their mothers, right? Like they aren't alone, right? There are all kinds of things that you'll see in later videos in this series that show you how Pink's alienation from not having that masculine role model and the mother just seems to be either omitted or indicted. So the boy is looking for this masculine role model, and the lyrics are quite clear about how the boy's fatherless. I mean, Santa did not come home as another illustration of loss of father. And the boy is also looking to act out his masculinity. In further verses of this song, the boy wants some soldiers and a drum. And now the idea that the boy has lost his father to the war is a safe assumption, considering the song came out during wartime, right? So the boy is attempting to act out this masculinity, but what he perceives as his father's masculinity. All of these social roles are taught, whether it's roles as worker, roles of gender, roles of nationality, all of these components to identity, which are socially constructed, are taught to children, right? But there is an absence here of that masculine role being taught. So Pink is acting out what he imagines masculinity to be, not the masculinity taught by his father, because his father died in the war. And you also see the juxtaposition between Pink and other children who have not lost their fathers, whose fathers returned. So you can see the song, and really the whole movie and album, argues for the omission of woman when the masculine is absent. It's quite counterintuitive. Like, even if you're thinking from a misogynist perspective, right? If the masculine is absent, wouldn't that go to the woman? So there's not even some hierarchical second class. There's just omission. There's just being alone, right? Total abandonment. So we're going to explore that. So you have that allusion to birth. Okay, the woman is making things clean. In Freudian terms, okay, the train tunnel, okay, the train coming out is a phallus, okay, and the desire for intercourse. So you can see how the woman is there, and there's that tunnel, and she's subordinate, okay. And Pika's alone with only woman, not women, not his mother, but woman as a concept from birth. Okay? Masculinity is a specter, it's a ghost. It's a ghost he is chasing. Okay, and that's a very important nuance here. So Pink cannot obtain proper sexual relations as a sexual subject because he is left with only women. That's classic Freudian theory. It's not necessarily an expression of my own personal opinion. All right. But this is throughout the film, okay, and what is being expressed. And it's no secret that progressive rock music in the 70s was full of all kinds of psychological understandings, philosophical understandings. You know, Pink Floyd isn't the only one, okay? The Police is full of Jungian allusions, spirits in the material world. We are Spiritus Mundi is said specifically, okay? So several Police albums, okay, Spirits in the Material World and Synchronicity especially, are all based on Jungian psychology. Okay, that's a tangent, but this is not at all unique to Pink Floyd. Okay, this is going throughout the progressive rock canon, throughout popular music in the 1970s, throughout its lyrics. Okay. The trope of Pink as dirty and woman as a cleaning agent also appears throughout the film, like in the song Mother. So you'll also see that there. And then at the end of this scene, the cleaning lady steps on the vacuum lever, returning the viewer into darkness. And then we're going to see when the tigers broke free and the allusion to war. But that's for the next video. So you got here. Hit a like if you like this. Subscribe, bell. I'm sure you're familiar with people telling you to do that if that's what you like. Thanks so much.